The first ever mission launched by the humankind onto the space was Sputnik 1. This was launched by the Soviet Union, and this act was marked as a pioneer step in the successful steps in the study of space and in the study of space science. After this step, many scientists and engineers from all around the world started to get attracted towards space science and the study of space. Hello everyone, it's me Medhavi Visal. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is not a book review. It's a kind of a book review because I'm referring this information to many different books that I've read in the past and I'm reading right now. But this is one of the reviews. We can say that it is a discussion about one of the major pioneer acts that India has taken for the contribution of space science. As we all know, India has just launched a rocket successfully to the moon. It was done on 23 August 2023. Yes, many countries today are launching their spacecrafts onto the moon and they are getting successful, pretty successful. And India has done so for the second time as well because there were 3 Chandrayaan missions. This was the Chandrayaan 3rd, which was successful. Then the Chandrayaan 1 was successful, but the 2nd was a failure. That's sad, but still, 1 and 3 were a success. But this is a pioneer act that is really important for the world globally. Why? Because India has been successful in launching and successfully landing their spacecraft in their rocket into the southern pole of the moon, in which no other country has ever gone to before. And now that the India has launched the mission and landed the Vikram lander into the moon, it will help us to know more about the formation of the moon, how the moon came to be one of the Earth's satellites, what is the condition of the moon, is there any danger to the moon, is there any danger to our natural satellite, and many other things about the moon, its past, its formation, etc. So that's why this is marked as a really important act, a really important step for the space science study, for the moon study, for the world globally. But today, in this video, we're not just going to be discussing about India's success, but we're also going to be discussing about the history of the India's space India Space Research Organization and how the space science in India came to be so developed like it is today, and how the space the space science in the world globally was so developed like this, and how developing countries such as neighbors of India like Nepal, Bhutan, etc. and developing countries from all over the world can get inspired from these kind of acts, and they can attempt to make a contribution for space science for their country, from their country as well. So we're going to be discussing in these types of things in today's video. So after I heard about the success of Chandrayaan 3 mission, I wanted to know more about the past. So it turns out the current chairperson of ISRO is S. Somanath, and the mission director of the Chandrayaan 3 mission was Mohana Kumar, who directed the mission to make that mission successful. Also, there are also the hand of the 17,000 engineers and space scientists of ISRO who came together, who unified together, worked together to make this mission successful today. So after this, the organization which launched the spacecraft into the moon was ISRO, which is Indian Space Research Organization. So after hearing this, I wanted to know more about the Indian Space Research Organization's history. So after looking into the history, after a brief study, what I learned was that there were many people who contributed in the establishment, in the invention of ISRO. But one of the major persons was Vikram Sarabhai. And the first spacecraft of India was launched by APJ Abdul Kalam, who was also a president during his time of India. And during his time, space science developed rapidly. So he also had a great hand in developing Indian space research and Indian Space Research Organization as well. These two people are the major people in the contribution of the Indian space research, and the space research of India, as well as many other things that have been developing in the India as well. These after these two persons, there are a long list of history of chairpersons who have contributed in the development of ISRO as well. So this is the past of ISRO, as you can see here. Now we can discuss about the things that the developing countries might take inside themselves, might get inspired, so that they can contribute in the field of space science as well. Let's take an example for my country. My country's name is Nepal, and the only satellite that Nepal has launched was the Nepali Sat-1, which was launched in 2019, not alone, but in collaboration with the other two countries. Now, there is not much of a contribution of Nepal into the space sciences field as well. So, because if the Sputnik 1, the Soviet Union's mission, was not launched, then today no kids or no adults would dream of becoming space scientists or astronauts. Today, if you ask many of the kids, they will tell that I want to be an astronaut or I want to be a space scientist when I grow up. Even I want to be an astronaut when I grow up. But if the Soviet Union had not taken that step, if America had not taken that step of the Apollo mission to go to launch humankind into the moon, then today no kid would dream of becoming an astronaut or a space scientist. So that was a pioneer act. But what we must remember was that weren't there failures of the Soviet Union? Weren't there failures of the Apollo mission? The whole Apollo mission was meant for the moon, and on its 11th turn did it get successful in finally launching humankind into the moon. Much blood has been sacrificed in the process of sending humankind into the moon. That was their failure as well. Even as we know, after the Apollo 11 mission, the 13 was also a failure, but luckily the crew got safely back to Earth before it was time for the spacecraft to explode. They got safely onto the Earth, but that mission was also a failure. Even after success, there were many failures. I have just read a memoir of one of the chairpersons of ISRO, that is K. Radhakrishnan, and the name of his memoir was My Odyssey. And in that, it turns out before he was a chairperson of ISRO, he had took the control. He was the mission director of one of the successful missions, one of the most successful missions of India, that is the GSLV mission. But the GSLV mission was failed. The GSLV mission failed several times during their experiments, and finally, at last, it got successful and proved that India could do anything. Now, after we hear about the past of all of these countries who are developing in the sector of space science, we people from developing countries might think that they are so ahead, even they are having failures. Then who are we to begin with? But that's not true. India was the first country to successfully launch their spacecraft into the Mars on their first attempt. Even though many people were saying that India will not get successful, India tried, and finally they got successful in their first attempt. Developing countries might have this pace as well. If we start to do our work now, if we contribute our work from today onwards, then our country might be in the status, in the level of all the other developed countries are being today in the field of space science. Our countries might also contribute rapidly in the field of not just space science but overall science, and many people in my country, Nepal, are also fighting for the development of the overall science in our country. Many scientists are contributing, many scientists are doing many kinds of protests about how budget should be developed, about how budgets should be separated, especially for the sectors of space science, but they have not been successful yet. I'm not saying that developing countries' youth are not successful. Developing countries' youth are doing much success, but they are doing that success in abroad, but not in their own countries. So, if the government of these developing countries might provide us level, might provide an environment for youth to work in their own countries and not go to abroad to work and not be successful in abroad but be successful in their countries, then developing countries like Nepal and other developing countries from all around the world can come in the status of the other developed countries that are today. So what I must say is that if we are trying to do something, then there might be failures. Yes, science is a thing of experimentation. In experimentation, many things come to be a failure. But as Mahatma Gandhi said, try until you die. We must try until we die. We must do so much hard work that even success would be forced to come behind us, so that success would be forced to come for us, and the success would be forced to launch us successfully into the moon or Mars that we are aiming today. If we do not aim these things, then no developing countries people will want to work in their countries, and in international forums or international gatherings, groupings, or in abroad as well, they will be ashamed to say their country's name, because their country is still a developing country and they have not developed in any of the sectors, and they will be ashamed to say their country's name. To prevent youngsters from being ashamed of themselves and their nationality, we must develop our country in order to make our country as developed as America, UK, Russia, India are developing today rapidly, not only in the field of space science but also in the field of other different countries, of other different sectors that they are doing that also helps in the field of space science. Nepal is rich in natural resources. From the Himalaya to the plain flat Tarai, we've got everything we wish for. If we power these natural resources to run our country, then we might be successful as well. Nepal has many kind of discoveries can be made in Nepal. From the Himalayas, about how the Himalayas came to be, and in Nepal there are that kind of soils there which really goes into the past, which might if scientists work together and do the research together in the country, then we might develop a fact, or we might find out something which might totally shock the world and which might differ from the actual facts that we are studying in science today. We can also do something. We can also find out things about the Earth's formation or about the Earth's future, etc., etc. We might find out about the other things. Nepal is a great place for seeing stars as well. We might learn about many different kinds of constellations and stars as well. And if we do not work today, then tomorrow no kid would want to be born in Nepal, and if they are born in Nepal, then they will be ashamed of their own country. So to prevent this from happening, we must work together. Youth today must work together for themselves as well as for their future generation, so that every other kid would want to come to Nepal. Every people from abroad would want to come to Nepal, because they will hear in the future that Nepal is a developed country. It is a peaceful and prosperous country which is developing rapidly in many of the sectors, which helps the country to be more developed and be more developed even than the developed countries today. So if we do not work today, then as I said earlier, no youth would want to stay in Nepal. So to prevent this, we must work. So let's work, let us raise our voices, let us contribute so that our country becomes a better place for humankind as well. Thank you.